I think a good way to get some perspective on your life is to understand the fact that the day you die is going to be a pretty regular day. I mean, for most people, you're going to be taking your last breath, and somebody somewhere is going to be grocery shopping. Somebody's going to be going to the gym or, going to the golf course or something. The world will go on. There are 7 days in the week. One of those days is going to be the day that you die. And then the next day is going to be the next day. So all of the narrative significance that you have imposed on this moment, all of the buildup, it doesn't actually exist in the real world. That was all your own projection. That's why I really think the hospital is a great way to understand life. Because if you've ever been to a hospital, you know that nobody who works at the hospital really cares. I don't mean that in like a bad way, in like a negligent way. Nobody at the hospital cares about you as much as you care about you. Because they can't. These people are at work. They have to do this all the time. If they got that attached to a particular outcome, nothing would actually function. Because when you're in the hospital as a patient, you are one patient among many. And there's a lot of stuff going on. There is, triage happening. But that's not how we experience it when we're there, because we are seeing ourselves as the protagonist, which is why the hospital is such a bewildering place. I mean, if you're at the hospital, you are having the worst day ever. You're saying goodbye to a loved one. You are suffering from some horrible, accident or illness or something. So you're having the worst moment of your life. You are in kind of a dramatic scene in your head. And then you look over and you see some nurse, and she's looking down at like a takeout menu, and she's saying, I don't know, teriyaki chicken again? And that's the hospital. It's not that that nurse doesn't care about what you're going through, but she's got her own life to live. She's got to figure out what to eat for lunch, and she'll get to you when she gets to you. And that is what the hospital is. It is a reminder that the world is indifferent, that the world does not feel what we feel, and it's not supposed to. I mean this in a good way. I mean, that's the problem to me with the current project among, the billionaire tech types in the world, guys who are trying to extend their life indefinitely. There's kind of a kick for immortality going around. People saying that death is optional, which I understand the idea behind this, but I really think this is a very misguided way to think about our own role in the universe. Because when you make the attempt to live forever, when you try to cut yourself off from the natural way that things go, what you're trying to do is become the patient and the hospital at the same time. The patient is the thing that feels. The patient is the thing that experiences. And the hospital is the thing that doesn't feel. It is indifferent. So when you try to live forever, what you're doing is you're trying to become the indifferent thing. You're trying to separate yourself from feeling. And that's what immortality will actually feel like if you achieve it. It will be numbing, because you're going to see everybody around you die. You're going to see the world changing, and you're not going to be going with it anymore. Your brain will no longer be able to process change and emotion because you are no longer a changing or, emotional person. You are the building. And like I said, the hospital, we see it as a bad place. We impose our emotions on this building. But the building itself is just a building. It's just a building with people. So that's what we got to keep in mind, is that that's how it's supposed to be. The building isn't supposed to feel anything, because if it did, then nothing would actually happen. We would never be able to feel our own experience in it, because we would not be the patients anymore, if that makes sense. Now I'm getting wrapped up in this metaphor, but you get what I'm saying. So if the narrative that we impose on life is somewhat false and somewhat misleading, then what is our real purpose in all of this? What is it that we're actually here to do? And this kind of question sounds a lot more complex than it actually is, because I think the answer is quite simple. And the answer is appreciation. Appreciation, I don't mean that in a positive way necessarily, not as a judgment, but appreciation as experience. And the thing about experience, the thing about appreciation, gratitude, is that it doesn't happen at the end of something. It's not something that you're building up to. Appreciation is something that you feel immediately, in the moment. You look around and you see the hospital walls. You hear something beeping. You look out the window and you see whatever you see. That is appreciation. And that is all we can actually experience in the world, is the moment that we're in and whatever it is that we're feeling. And that is what art represents. That is the function of art in human life. Art is the technology of appreciation. It is a compressed form of experience, whatever it is the artist wants to communicate to you. Art is two hospital patients waving at each other. It is somebody asking the question, are you seeing this too? This is what I'm seeing. Are you seeing this? Do you hear that beeping noise? Did you see that guy with the bloody arms? That is all we can really offer each other, is moments of appreciation and presence. And that's really, I think, the best way to understand human existence in terms of relationships. The fundamental purpose of relationships is not understanding. It is presence. And I think that is where things get confused. Because when you think about relationships as being something that enhances, that is achieved, when you think about a relationship as asking enough questions and gathering enough information to understand somebody, then you are taking yourself out of the moment. You are no longer experiencing things directly. You are now imposing narrative. You understand this more, especially as you get older, in that when you encounter somebody new that you've never met before, you're never going to tell them everything. You're never going to ask them everything. You're never going to learn everything. And doing so is folly. It is absurd. The only thing you can actually do, the only thing that can actually happen on a real level is presence, is being in the same room with somebody, eye to eye, face to face. And that is why text messaging and our current format of communicating is so lacking. Because all a text message can do is convey information. It cannot convey presence. It is not happening. It is, asynchronous. It's not happening in the moment, in the flow of things. And that is the danger. The danger is in thinking that life can be understood through sheer exchange of information. And I think that leads to what is the most harmful thing that we can do to each other as people. And it's something that I think gets mistaken as positive and pleasant. And that is asking each other the question, how is your life going? On the one hand, this is, when somebody asks you how your life is going and you answer, at some level, this is kind of deception, right? Because they asked you and all of a sudden you had to come up with a whole compressed narrative of everything that's ever happened to you leading up to this point. So whatever you say is going to be a little bit false. And I think we've all kind of experienced that, just the feeling of it. But the other thing that asking somebody how their life is going does is it separates you. Because when you think about how your life is going, you're no longer in your life anymore. You are now in the observation booth. And you're looking back at your life instead of actually being in it. You can't be in both places at once. All you can do, you can either look at your life or you can live your life. And it's a huge mistake that I think people make, is thinking that these two things can be straddled simultaneously. And the answer to this, which also I think we've all kind of figured out, is simplification. Somebody says, how's your life going? The answer is fine. Good. How are you? You have to understand that when somebody says, how's your life going? They don't actually want to know. They're just being nice. It is just conversation. It's small talk. But the problem is, the thing about small talk, the thing about that answer, the simple answer of fine, how are you? It's not just that when somebody asks you this question, you have to say that. The trick is you have to say that to yourself. Anytime you're in a moment where you're actually asking yourself, maybe it's like late night and you can't sleep, and you're thinking, how's my life going? That is also an opportunity for small talk. The answer in that moment, when you ask yourself, how's my life going? The answer is fine. It's going good. That is not a moment for evaluation. And thinking that you can evaluate your way into a more positive existence is folly. That is chasing your own tail. That's why, like I'm saying, the purpose of relationship, the purpose of all of this is appreciation. It is presence. That is the best thing that any of us can offer each other, is being connected in the moment and feeling that connection. That's why I think The most pure form of human conversation. I've never experienced this myself. The most pure kind of conversation has to be talking somebody down off of a ledge. When somebody is about to jump off a building and you get to be Batman leaning out the window talking to them and trying to convince them to not jump. That is the most pure kind of conversation. Because, I've never done it myself, but I imagine when you're in that situation, you are no longer asking, hey, how's your life going? Because you know the answer to that question. That's absurd. All you're doing is trying to connect with this person. The only thing you're trying to accomplish from this moment is convincing somebody to choose existence over non-existence. Everything else in the world, all financial, social, political considerations, those are all gone. This is now one person talking to another person as people. And I got to feel like that conversation is extremely present. It is extremely in and of the moment. Because what we're dealing with in the moment of talking somebody down off the ledge is everything there is. It is this. It is trying to tell somebody that choosing this is better than choosing the void. And I think that is real connection. That's why I feel like, this feels very, heavy. And it can feel, dramatic and morose maybe. But my point is that it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be a tragic thing. Like I said, the day you die is a regular day. If that guy on the ledge decides to jump, there's going to be a few people on the street who are going to be a little bit shooken up. But most of the world is going to move on. So if we are all patients in the hospital and all we can do is experience things, then what? Then what lesson are we supposed to take from it? And the lesson is the same thing that you can learn from that nurse who is on break, who is asking herself, does she want teriyaki chicken? That's everything.